Hi, it's Kobus Neethling joining.
Hi, Kobus.
Hi.
Hi. Baie welcome.
Okay.
Okay. So it seems like everyone is in. So I'm just waiting for Coach Cole to join. He said he's struggling with his Wi-Fi, but he'll join as soon as he's up and going. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to our second informal webinar. So there's so we started with this last week. We had about 5 guys up and running. So it's just it started off with an idea of just a group of amateur coaches that is on a WhatsApp group, and we started sharing ideas, and we said, why not have a informal chat on over Skype. So it started with Skype last week, and this week we grew into Zoom. We've got a few coaches from overseas, and then we're also privileged to have Kobus with his background in creativity, and he'll hopefully share some ideas. And then we've got a international flavor as well, South Africans that is coaching overseas. And then we've also got a coach that's currently coaching in Germany, and hopefully we'll get to share a few ideas. So just to open up just a few logistics. So Zoom only allows 30 minutes of meeting time when you're more than 3 participants. So we've got 3 slots. So last week we ended about 7:45, so we don't want to keep you that long. And then I'm going to present just to open it, just to provide a bit of structure, and then we're going to open the floor. And hopefully, I know Kobus, if you push for time, you might want to share in the first bit. Then we're going to open the floor, and you guys can share as we go along. And then last 15 minutes maybe to you for Q&A, and hopefully you'll get the answers to your questions if that's fine with everyone.
That's good.
Fine.
All good.
Yeah. So I'm going to share. Hopefully you'll see the screen. I'll share it with you afterwards, the slides. So I'm not going to go through the whole presentation. I'll share it with you guys via email, or I'll leave it on here in the message section of the. So can you guys see the slides?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I just wanted to. So it's, as I said earlier, this is very informal. So the topic, so we a group of coaches, and we came up with the possibility of this topic, just to coaching after failure, because I think every one of us went to that dip where you have all the answers to your questions and you're not getting the results, or it's been a poor season and you need to rebuild for next season. And I start off with I want to start off with showing the I don't know if I move the slide. Can you guys see that?
The Eddie Jones slide.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
Eddie Jones, and this is quite significant. This picture, he just lost the World Cup final, and how so everything seems to be crashing down. How you return from this, and then the next slide, there's they say there's normally 2 types of coaches: those who have been fired, and those that are in line to be fired. And then coaching is nothing more than eliminating mistakes before you get fired. And then what I wanted to touch on quickly is just burnout. Burnout is reality amongst coaches. And if you look at the Richie McCaw slide, so this was taken from this Graham Henry and Richie McCaw after they lost against France in the 2007 World Cup. And you could clearly see the effect of the loss on him, and you can see his face. There's a couple of examples. Darren Lehman, after he just resigned as the Australian coach after the whole sandpaper incident. And so burnout is reaction to chronic stress that involves negative interactions between environmental and personal characteristics. And in the slides, I've put a couple of questions that you can ask yourself to determine if you're burning out or you're fatiguing in coaching. And I think the main question that you should ask is coaching still fun for you? Are you still enjoying it? And then some of us that have experienced, and some of us see are right. And one of the easiest ways to deal with this stress is to go into depression and to isolate yourself from family members, and then also isolate yourself from just your assistant coaches. And you start. We normally say we want to work hard, but we don't work effective, so that leads to burnout. sometimes we want to overwork as well as coaches. So you want to do more. You want to look for that errors that the team are making. You want to work harder, find solutions. So that's the next slide. And then what I want to lead into is how you pull yourself together. And I think this is where we're actually heading for tonight. It's just to have a discussion on what do we do as coaches after we didn't get that success or that reach that expectation. And in the slides, I'm going to share a few tips. And I think one of the most important things is how do you as a coach stay healthy and fit? And how do you look after yourself? Because we tend to, when we're in that, I call it dark moments in coaching, we tend to look for solutions to make the players better, but we don't look after ourselves. So it's late night in front of the telephone calls, Skype meeting to other coaches. And you're always looking for solutions, but who's looking after yourself? Are you surrounded? Because normally when you're in that dark space, you feel alone. And sometimes your assistant coaches also don't want to buy in. They don't want to assist. They also want to nail you because some of them might want your job. And how do you look after yourself from a personal level? And I think sometimes, and I've seen it, I've been in there, you lose your sense of humor. Everything, you get irritated with people around you and it's like you're alone in this. And so that is where we're heading with the talk tonight. So that's a bit of an introduction. I'll share the slide, but the main purpose of that is to make it interactive. Everyone can share their experience and hopefully we find answers for your questions tonight. So I'm going to open it up. You want to come in and maybe share a bit of, because you worked with the Sevens teams, book as well. I spoke to Coach Paul earlier about your book, and we were actually, and I was, okay, it was nice, but really. So we're going to open it up to, and Kobus, if you maybe want to start.
Yeah, thanks. My sort of coaching focus was probably 80% in the world of business, but the other 20%, in education and in sport. And we had magical moments with Paul, the Cruise team, and I worked with people like A.B. de Villiers and a few. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
yeah.
let me just carry on then. And because I'm a specialist in how the brain operates and in creative behavior, creative thinking. That's where I start. That's where I begin with all the coaching and all the training that we do with groups and with individuals. There's like a shoot sound, but anyway. So about 15 years ago, 12 of us were invited to spend 2 weeks in Austin, in Texas. We were people in the creativity fraternity, in psychologists, and people who work with human beings in that sense. And we were asked to put everything on the table that works with people and it doesn't work with people. And from that, eventually, we developed a model we call the breakthrough line that Paul knows very well. It's the point of departure of human beings. So for me, the concept of failure is not the right choice here, because failure, just the concept itself has got a psychological sort of edge and take away a team or a person's self-confidence and so on. So this model of above, below the line is that you make thinking choices. No matter what happens to you, you make that choice. I remember Nelson Mandela's words many years ago to Bill Clinton when he said, "Bill, you don't understand. If I still think about it and blame and whatever, I'm never a free human being." So thinking is absolutely your choice in any circumstances. Working with A.B. de Villiers as one of the best batsmen ever in the world, it's exactly that. If A.B. saw himself when he made a duck or naught and as a failure, he would have remained there. For him, it was we call it, it's a moment. It's not life. And you've got to separate it. The moments in your life, the moments that you lose, the moments of frustration, and you have got to separate that with a big picture. And the moment you can understand that there's always a better choice than the below the line choice. There's always a better choice than feeling despondent or negative or whatever is below that line that is always linked to not winning. And that's critical in the work that we do. It's absolutely critical. It's that freedom, that freedom of thought and of being that one needs to understand. And once you understand that and you anchor yourself above that line, then you're a totally different human being. It's like driving and a taxi cuts you off, and you always go to your default, and that the default could be anger, but you begin to change your default to a choice above the line, like patience or whatever you choose, and you start doing that. It's tough and it's very difficult at the beginning, but the more you do that, all your defaults, your below the line defaults changes, and Paul True can tell you that. That's how we work with these 7 teams that started to win all matches. That we had a team that was anchored above the line. Any player below the line that affects everyone negativity. You don't want those sort of people in your team. That is one part of it. That you can work through this program, that you anchor a team above the line. There's magic in that. I can tell you this. I don't know if you know this models, the state of flow. Csikszentmihalyi's models are where you start with unconscious incompetence, and then you go through to conscious income, and so you eventually get to conscious competence. You've trained all your people now to catch the ball, to see gaps, whatever. But then you move from there to the state of flow, when you don't think about these things. It just happens. It's a magical connection between people. And that's where you want to anchor. That's where the super teams, that's where the AB de Villiers of the world are. They in that state of flow. Then you're always better than your opposition, kind of thing. So that's the one, our approach to coaching and to human beings and to whatever. And we've seen this in business where we're sinking businesses start to make 60, 70% profit, when that was the sort of attitude to that. The second was to start understanding how your whole brain works, because that is absolutely critical. Because here too, you will always go to your default thinking. If you're a top left brain dominant person, you will always try to think in a rational kind of way. You will also always try to analyze, and sometimes that's the right way to do it. But sometimes that doesn't work to stay in that default thinking mode. And you need to move through all the other 8 dimensions of the brain, because maybe your solutions and your answers are in these other dimensions of the brain. And so for me, it's critical. And that's why, with all the teams that I work with, be it I work with those years, even with Jake White's, we did all the brain profiles, worked with Rusty when he was at the Stormers. You need to understand the brain profile of all your players, because you need to understand that every position in a rugby field or wherever, whatever sport, that every position, that there's a preferred mode of thinking. A front ranker, I've got all the profile. We take a Bismarck Duplessis, who's the hooker, for instance. He's got a very strong L1 brain. It's a perfect brain for that position because it's a focused, rational thinking, aggressive kind of brain. Exactly perfect. But if you're a flyer like Niles Butter was, you need to be a spatial brain because you need to automatically see space and so on. I don't want to go into details here. But for me, it's 2 very simple approaches to any form of coaching, be it one-on-one, a teacher with a student, to understand what is that student's learning preference, and maybe to teach that student that you can actually learn from all quadrants and from all dimensions of the brain. And so, and of course, eventually creativity comes into it, because that was the science. That is where I did a post-PhD in the identification and development of creative behavior, because eventually, after everything is said and done, it's creativity that gives you the edge. Basically nothing else. That kind of thing, to think on your feet when no one else is thinking on his feet. That you are thinking, that immediately you got a new idea. Immediately you can get out of a set sort of position. Out of what you've been trained, you can move. So eventually creativity is also this umbrella over all of this. And one thing I think we must understand, that creativity is teachable and it's trainable and it's learnable. And unfortunately, that often is not part of our coaching and our training and so on. Well, that's it for me. I don't know if there's any questions. Also, I'd like to for a few minutes more.
Okay, so there was a question on the Charles Perrin asked quick. Could you possibly share your positional brain profile mode after the school? I'm intrigued. So that's
what I could do. I could actually, all of you in this sort of part of this group now, although it's very tough times to do it now, but I can link with my colleagues. We can send you a link well, that you can send to your colleagues here tonight, and then they can do their brain profiles. We'll do that. I'll organize that for them.
Okay,
So I'll ask how many of their 5. Paul, of course, has done his, and all the teams that we've worked with have done theirs and so on. So get an idea of your own profile. And it's not like, just to sort of give you an idea, just 8 dimensions, and this first 4 and then 8. And there's no high or low scores. Everyone is 300. It's just the different shapes, and to understand yours, and then also for communication and team building and so on, for your team to also understand this. But I'll do that. I'll organize with my colleagues tomorrow morning and organize that they send you a link that you can send to. How many people are we? 5 or 6 people?
That will be about 12.
12.
Yeah, so yeah.
Paul, was het voor allemaal stikken, denk jij, Paul? Is Paul still there?
Yeah, I'm here, Kobus. Yeah, I'll just come again.
But do you think we must send a link? We must do all 12 profiles of this coaching group. Let's do that, yeah. I'll do that. I'll send a link.
I think so.
No.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
And as I said, Paul can also be your whole rank coach. He's done it many, many times before.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks for
I'll do that.
I'd just like a question before. I know you're quite pressed for time. I like a question, and how important is to get the right dynamics within your coaching staff, because you might get coaches that doesn't believe in your systems. Or you've been appointed at a club and you're assigned to coaches. You don't have any input on who you assign. What do you think this profile will play? What role will a brain profile play in that scenario? And then now let's say you don't like to use failure. Let's say you didn't achieve your goals and you're in a slump now. How does that brain profile assist you in coming out of the slump?
We as I say, the brain. I said this the other day. A senior group of a platinum mind. But once you understand the brain, I really mean it now. And I'm first of all a scientist before anything else. Once you understand this 8-dimension brain, you really do not need anything else anymore, because you use this as a communication tool to understand how do I communicate with player A versus player B versus C, because they're all different. They all have their own preferences. You use this as an evaluation tool, because if something goes wrong, let's stay with Paul True's 7's team. It is very easy to see with what's maybe a focus problem, that they lost focus during the game, and you can easily when you analyze the situation, see that it was focus. So you would go back and retrain focus, or it could be a spatial problem, that they missed the space that was available to them. So I would also use the whole brain as an evaluation tool and say, where were the gaps? You see, any successful company in the world needs to be 8-dimensional. You don't, as a leader, need to be 8-dimensional, but you must be able to see that there are gaps and find people that can fill those gaps, so that eventually you're an 8-dimensional team or a group. And that's kind of very, very important. And coming to your question, it happens to all of us that we're disappointed. You know, that people stab us in the back. But let me share Paul Torrance's words with you. When we introduce creativity to people, we always say that creativity, it never stands alone. It's always a combination of other qualities that need to be in place. One of the qualities needs to be the passion. You need to have a very, very high level of passion, 9 out of 10 kind of passion, if you want to be succeeding. And then the one that is connected with your question, that courage is absolutely, totally linked to courageous success, or to creativity success. Courage is completely linked to it. Paul Torrance once said, creative people, creative teams, creative whatever, can perform miracles, but they are always, now listen to these words and don't forget what I'm saying now, but they are always in danger of crucifixion. Exactly what you're saying. People try to stab you in the back, they pull you down or whatever, and if you don't have the courage to keep on going, you go down. So, and courage is an incredible key. I've written a television series on courage and books on courage, because courage to me is so, so important, because your courage starts to go, all these other things start to fall. So courageousness is critical for you to, in times of failure or not winning or not whatever, to remain courageous, you know, stay there. And it's also a learnable kind of thing. I can tell you that. It's learnable. You can develop courage, but there are different, and I don't have the time tonight, but there are different kinds of courage. Remember, there's something like moral courage or ethical courage or social. There's a lot of different kinds of courage. But it's critical to remember that these things are all linked to one another, and you can't let the one drop, because it'll influence one another.
So, Kobus, we've got a couple of questions.
Okay,
Yeah.
but anyway.
No, it's fine.
Okay,
So
well, but, anything, write to me and we can take this
Yeah,
further. But I will send you,
Okay.
if it's 12 people, I will send you a link that you can send the same link to all 12, and they will go onto the internet. It'll take them 25 minutes or so to complete this. And then maybe at some stage we can actually discuss it, but we'll send the profiles back to them, and they can, or Paul's also there because he's a practitioner, so trained whole brain practitioner, so he's also can assist.
So there's a couple of questions. I'm going to run through the questions. So John asked, just want to get to his question regarding, do you think coaches limit some players' creative thinking? About coach?
Yeah. If you've got 15 dominant left brain players, then it is difficult to introduce creativity as a sort of a culture in that team. There will be creativity moments that they need to understand. So I would say this. Therefore, for me, what you are taught beforehand, your skills that you are taught and what you are taught. The Americans use the word springboard. It's only a springboard to do things differently. Paul Torrance also said this. He said, respect your left brain. Respect it. Respect all the rules and governing things and all those learnable things. Respect the left brain, but use all the freedom under the right brain. All the freedom. And that's what we don't do. Often we're stuck with what we taught and we stay there. We can't think outside that box. So what you taught, that is what you play on a Saturday. Instead of saying what I'm taught is fine, but I can use that as a springboard to go all over. And that is absolute. Creativity is the edge. I mean, your magical players, look at the last World Cup. Just think what Russie did, by the way, just to maybe to analyze it from a whole brain perspective. For all the games up to that stage, the last game, he used a very strong left brain approach. He did everything was sort of the same. It was like a model that he repeated in every game kind of thing. So the way that England prepared against them was that this is going to be, again, a very structured, very sort of controlled left brain approach. And it didn't work that way. Because suddenly, halfway through the game, everything changed. And it was in a much more a loose, creative kind of game. And that bamboozled England, you see. So that is it, that creativity eventually gives you that surprise. Because I'm talking too much now, but the one thing that I've, in the past 20 years, discovered is that the moment you become predictable, you've lost in the modern game. The moment you become predictable, because then all your opponents know exactly what you're going to do, and they prepare for that. I remember Andre Watson, because we actually trained a few referees. How do you become and I developed a brain instrument for referees. Is that he said that there were some stages in when he refereed, when he watched the Springbok game, he knew exactly what they were going to do. And their opponents knew exactly what they were going to do, those stages. You see, you lost. So creativity is that you become unpredictable. That your opposition, they just don't know what you're going to do. And that's, I think, where we got stuck in South African rugby for a long time. We became so absolutely predictable.
Okay. So we're going to end off. We've got about 4 minutes left on this meeting, and I'm going to ask a question I'll leave if it's fine with you, Kobus, your email address.
Oh, I'll leave that now, because if I can leave now, it's fine. Otherwise,
but there's a last question, and I think we want
to
expose Coach Pola, but how did you make Coach Pola a better coach during your time together?
How did I make Paul True a better coach?
Yes.
But I think he was already a very good coach. No, I think Paul bought into this completely. The first thing that he said, he wanted to become a whole brain specialist. He wanted to understand how the brain works, that he can implement it with his players, that he could connect with them, and that he could, and that a team spirit means that you know every player's brain. That's what it means. You link with them. They think you're my friend in a certain kind of way. And it also his whole brain approach. I remember he studied the dominance of all his opponents. Fiji, for instance, playing a very strong, what we call a structured L2 game. And the moment you got them, you understood that, you can come with a different angle. And I remember the one match, for instance, where they formed a 50-man line-out against Fiji and scored. And they bamboozled Fiji because they were thinking out of the box the whole time. And what I've also discovered with Sevens rugby, in contrast with 50 man. In sevens, the two top quadrants of the brain are critical. You need to focus and you need to see space at the same time. You need to focus and see space. And that, I think, has worked incredibly well for Paul. I can carry on what but he was a good coach.
Okay. So Kobus, I'm just going to wrap it up. So any last messages for coaches from you? So you've got about 2 minutes. If you need to motivate a coach that is in a slump or he didn't achieve the expectations or the goals, how would you motivate him? Just a few last thoughts from you.
I'll give you a story that Paul knows the story, that something I used earlier. I gave a talk to a group of women some time ago, and about this above below the line. And one woman came to me afterwards. She was smiling. Said, "You know, for the past 4 months, I was below that line. I was tormented. I was negative. I was stressed out completely." And she said, "But this morning, I'm free. I'm liberated." And she said to me, "Because what I did, I kept him there for 4 months. He didn't say that she was supposed to marry a man. He left her just before the wedding. And she said, I kept him there for 4 months. He didn't say, I want to stay there." And then she said these words. She said, "He's gone now." And what I realized was this: I confused a moment in my life with life. And this is what we do specifically in sport. We take a moment of not winning, losing a match, not doing well, and we make that life. Not life. It's a moment. Deal with it, carry on. And we all have moments. Every human being, we have moments. Never make a moment in sport. Never make it life. That would be my words to your coaches.
Okay. Thanks, Kobus. Thanks for your time. And
thank you, everyone. Take care then. Eh?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye.
Okay, guys. So we're gonna move now from the one meeting to the next. So I've never been in this position. So let's just. I'm gonna stop this meeting and then everyone just connect on the next one. Is that fine?
Okay, Doc.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Marcel. Okay, guys. Seems like most of the attendees are back. So we're going to open up now, and I think that was a good introduction to our session. We've got about 45 minutes left, so we're going to move over to the next meeting after 30 minutes as well. Is there anyone that wants to open the floor and start sharing? Maybe Coach Paul, I don't know if you're interested in sharing now or maybe at the end.
Yeah, I think I'll come in and maybe when needed. Like I said to you,
but you need it now.
When we spoke earlier. when we spoke earlier, you know, I said to you, I would like to maybe just to observe and just listen in and see what everyone has to say, and just to maybe, I think maybe as a starting point. Okay,
so let's open the floor. Anyone that wants to share their story, how they dealt with being in a slump, how they got from that position, and how they regrouped, if you want to use that word. I know there's different sport codes. There's not only rugby on tonight. So I know there's someone from tennis, football. So if they maybe want to share. Coach Paul, I think you need to go.
Koba, I don't
think
can I say something?
Yes, you were welcome.
I don't necessarily have any experience of being in a slum, but if I could just ask Coach Paul, in terms of creativity of players, linking back to what Kobus said, how would you go about training that? How would you set up a session where you could train your players to be creative in different situations, rather than just playing to a set plan, as it were, or being creative within the plan, rather?
I think when I started to work with Kobus, the first time, I think the biggest one, maybe 2 or 3 people came to present. So obviously Kobus was the main who was leading this whole creative approach to coaching and into performance. And I think the first thing is to change the mindset of the players in a coaching style to what is possible. And I think that was probably the biggest one. And so just maybe to give you an example, if there's a chair in front of you, what do you see? You see either one or 2 things. You either see the chair or you see the space around the chair. So if you have to ask someone to draw the chair, they can draw it in 2 ways. They can either draw it as they see it, or they can draw the outline. So it's the outer space, and then the chair will be the end product, if that makes any sense. So I think the first thing that they had to do is to change the mindset of what am I doing now and what is possible within with a new way of thinking. Now that in itself is like the whole process, because you have to understand how people think. You have to understand why they do things. And then you have to challenge their thought process. You have to challenge their current way of thinking. And only once you've done that, you can actually move into a new style, a new way of doing things. And I think that was probably the first starting point for us. When Kobus was talking about you have your thinking style or your thinking preference, and how can you become a whole brain player? How can you become a whole brain coach? Because you can't, just move from a left brain, a L1, a L2, if I can make an example, and all of a sudden you want to become a creative player. There are certain things that's always going to be part of your default, but can I recognize that I'm in this space, in this mode of thinking now, and how can I adjust to see other possibilities? And I think, that is the underlying framework that we had to put in place first. Different kind of thinking, different thought processes, and then move from there. The philosophy that Kobus spoke about, staying above the line, that was what we've also been implemented within the team to start seeing new possibilities. So if you think of anything that's negative, that is below the line, and anything that is positive, above the line, and we had to get the players into that space where they can stay and just think, in a positive kind of a way about the training, the possibilities in terms of what you want to achieve as a team and things like that. When he spoke about the moments, in life, we also talked about the moments in a game. I mean, we all know, because we all involved in sport, you're only going to have maybe a couple of moments, and we spoke about 5 or 6 moments in sevens that you're going to have in a game to either win or lose that game. And how are you going to fight for every single moment? And that you then take to your training, and how you're going to prepare, for a tournament, or how you're going to prepare for a game. So how do you make players more creative? You can't just go out and just start with a creative mindset, and you're just going to go out there and hoping that the players are now all of a sudden going to be see the big space, and they're going to see more options in attack or defense. You'll have to start with the basics first, and just baby steps. Just keep building it and keep building it. And once the players become more confident in what they need to do as within this basic framework, then you can start applying and giving them more responsibility to become more creative.
I want to, first Warren. So I want to get to you. So for those of you that don't know Warren, so Warren is a South African. He's staying in the UK but coaching in the USA. So he's the current assistant coach of the USA Women's Sevens team. So I want to, and it gets back to your topic. And I think in your case, or in Coach Paul, when he was involved with sevens, he's still involved. Is how do you bounce back? So I want to create a scenario for you. So this is your last pool game. You already qualified for the quarterfinals. You lose that game. How do you motivate, or how do you bounce back in the next? Because you've got about 45 minutes to an hour, or hour 15 until you play that quarterfinal. What do you do in that space of time, and how do you bounce back?
Great question. Yeah, and I agree with what Paul said. He sort of articulated that message pretty well there. Just in reference to your question, so first tournament out, first World Series event out in Glendale. This actually happened to us. So we played our first 2 games, won the first 2 games very convincingly, and then came up against a decent French team who, fair to say, he probably outcoached us in that particular game with his tactical preparation. And then we actually lost that game. So we lost that game, and obviously final game on day 1. So basically, you've got an evening to go and digest it before you have to come back fighting the next day. No, for us it was a very simple one. So you take the lessons we learned from that particular game. We recognize you have to put everything in sort of perspective. I sort of looked at the way we prepared ourselves before the 2 games. It was fair to say that was our worst warm-up in that particular game. Now, there's a number of factors related to that. So Paul just alluded to the line. Perhaps we dipped under the line in terms of how we prepared ourselves individually and as a team. And with the preparation, I mean, how did we individually got ourselves in the best possible space to make ourselves ready to go into this game. So that was a factor. There was quite an interesting comment, and then a comment that I actually used in our post day 1 reflection as well. So just before we went on to left the warm up, as we leave the warm up. So they've obviously got their normal team huddle. One of the girls, her line was, "Let's go and win this game." So instantly, we've moved. In that moment, we've already moved away from our process because we're now already focused on this particular outcome. So this is like 5 minutes before kickoff, and we've now walked away from our process goals for that particular game. So there can be a level of sort of the mental capabilities that kick in there. Just hang on 1 second. Sorry, just had to close the door because I've got a 2-year-old who's going riot, who's running riot here. Yeah, so that in itself had a big factor in that particular game. We were pretty clear on our strategic plan in terms of how we think it was best possible to obviously beat France, linking that to our process goals. We've just sort of went away from it. So how the game evolved, a couple of incidents within the game where we just lost the bounce of the ball, obviously went to the French, and instantly we went back to the default, back to how we used to do things. So we used that as a lesson as well, because we did a lot of preparation leading up to that particular event in sort of what I call the world's best problem solvers, because that was a big sort of work on for us, again, as Kobus alluded to it, where they is how we use this whole brain approach. And fair to say, the USA is a very sort of linear and very structured approach. So they just fell back into that slump. But what we didn't get carried away by the outcome of that particular event. We linked it back to our ultimate goal of the tournament, and we were rebuilding this new identity of our culture. So the ultimate goal for that tournament was to be the world's best at this culture. So the question that was posed to the players is, how do you want to be perceived by the rest of the world? Would the rest of the world recognize these three key things that we stand for as a team? So we based everything around that. So that one was a great opportunity for us after that game to just link back to these things and use all those lessons we've learned through that. Never did we once speak about the outcome of that game, losing that game, and what the effects was. We looked at all the things, the behavioral stuff, if you want to call them in that way, that sort of got us to that stage. And then we got a quick plan in action of, right, how do we get, if we were in game 1 and 2 in this particular mindset, how do we get back there versus where we are? Because there was a lot of cool stuff that come out of that game 3. They recognized how sloppy some of the individuals were with some of their preparation. I definitely took ownership, because I felt I was outcoached by the French coach, just in terms of how they quickly shifted their tactics for that particular game. We couldn't adapt well enough. So showed a little bit of vulnerability there from a coaching standpoint. And the more the players see that, the more they ultimately buy into the big picture thing that we want to create. And it's also the other stuff linking into that was, obviously it was the first of 8 tournaments, I think. First of 8 tournaments, and that's leading up into the Olympics. Oh, we know where we stand with the Olympics now, but it was all about this big journey, and we sort of used that sort of lessons that we learned throughout to highlight that. If that answers your question, I recognize a lot of waffling there. I think you're still on mute, mate.
So thanks for that, Coach Warren. I think you touched on a lot of principles that we can apply. Now, Charles, is it fine if I ask you, because you played at a professional level, and then you later became a coach. Let's give you the same scenario. So you're a player in that scenario that I are now. What do you expect from a coach?
Sorry, Wilbur, you're gonna have to give that scenario again. I lost power when you were putting that scenario over it was.
So let's say you're playing a sevens tournament, and it can be a fifth tournament. You're playing a tournament, and you lose your final pool game before you go into quarterfinals. How do you regroup as a team? But what do you expect from a coach in that regard? What do you as a player expect from a coach?
I think naturally from the outset, it's just you want the coach to come in as kind of neutral as possible and not really show the players the emotions that you may be feeling. You need to kind of stay as positive as possible and wherever possible, like was said, track back to your own process and what exactly is going to get you into the right frame of mind going into that quarterfinal.
Okay, and what do you think, Coach? Let's say now there was a massive expectation that you should win this game. You didn't make it. You sometimes, in that regard, expect the coach to say less and maybe just work out a plan of action, or what do you expect?
Yeah, I think it all depends. I think it's just reading the room. I think sometimes you need to say less and sometimes you need to say more. However, you just got to be careful about how you speak to every individual and whether you need to speak to certain individuals or whether you need to speak to the whole team. I think it just really depends on the context. Yeah, so just to be sure, you're saying you lost the game, you didn't get into the quarterfinal?
No,
Or
no,
you
you
already
lost the game, so that's your last pool game, but then you already qualified for the quarterfinal. So what momentum you take into that quarterfinal?
Yep. So yeah, I mean, just try and keep that positive mindset that got you into the quarterfinal, and trying to flush away that loss as quick as possible, and not harp on it. And I think if you need to give individual feedback, you do it in a manner and a space where the player is really comfortable, and it's not going to really affect him, or at least bog him down before going to that quarterfinal.
Okay, thanks for that, Charles. Is there any other people that want to ask Coach Warren or Charles or Coach Paul True a question, or anyone that wants to share?
Hi, yeah, Doc. Me,
Yes.
Philip.
Yes, Philip.
Hi, everyone. I'm Philip Humphries, all the way from Darling. Yeah, just a question to Warren, Paul, all the top guns there in the top tier of the coaching. Warren, why are you shaking your head? How do you deal with referees that can cost you your career or a title? Anyone can go, Paul. Anyone?
I think it's okay. So if I can maybe start, I think it's how you approach things, and what Kobus talked about, staying above the line. There are, in a game or in life, there are always going to be internal things that's going to affect you, and there will be external things. And what are the things that you can control? The external things you don't have a lot of control over. Whether it's the weather or whether it's the ref, you won't have a lot of control over those things. If you go into any game with the mindset that the ref is an external factor, and no matter what he's going to do in a game, it is not going to take me below the line. If I can use the same kind of lingo that Kobus spoke about. So it all depends, so how are you going to approach and what kind of mindset you're going to come into it. I know it's very challenging. It is very, very difficult, because there are certain things, that refs normally do in a game, or sometimes do in a game, that's going to mean that you're either going to lose or win that game. Critical stages in a game where you could have scored a try, or the opposition could have been prevented from scoring points, and it didn't happen. And it all depends what kind of mood you as a coach or anyone is going to set. If you're going to talk constantly about the ref, the players are going to talk about the ref. If you're going to go into a game and you warn players about the behavior or the actions or any calls that the ref might make or that he made in the game, then it is how players are going to approach the game. So in my experience, I prefer to take the ref out of the game completely. If you at a professional level, obviously you're going to analyze the ref, and you're going to talk about, what his the tendencies are, in terms of his penalty rates and those kind of things, and just see how you can outsmart the ref a little bit. But I won't make him part of my approach to a game. And not even, post-game, because if you're constantly going to talk about that, you're just going to affect all the other people. I would rather try to focus on the opportunities that I had in the game. What were the moments that I had in the game that I didn't take? And go to those ones, because those are the ones that we can control, because we had a certain plan when we went into the game. We equipped our players with certain skills. We spoke about our values, our principles in both attack and defense, just to make an example. And those are the only things that I can review on post-game. I cannot, because I can't control the ref, I can't talk about the ref. So that is, if I have to give you maybe my take on this, that is probably how I would approach it. And as opposed to looking at something external that you really can't control.
So sorry guys. So just in short, Paul, what you're saying, concentrate on those things you can control. That's it.
100%. 100%. It's the hours that you put in on the things that you can control. If you're gonna waste your energy and your time thinking about external things, you're losing energy that you could have spent on the things that's going to matter most, and it's going to make a difference in your game, in your training, in your philosophy, in your approach, and everything. And we only have so much energy that we spend per day on a lot of things. I prefer to spend that energy on the things that's going to make me better as a coach, that's going to make me better as a player.
Thanks.
Coach, if I just can come in here, so there's a trend in the Boland. As soon as you lose a game, if it's by 60 points or 50 points, you always blame the ref.
Yeah, Doc.
Yeah, Philip, there you've got it. The big dog just answered it. The one big dog in the group, mate. Yeah, no, I agree with Paul. I'll look at the opportunities. Some of these refs gives you great opportunities as well. Both sides, you know where they're going to be pretty hot on stuff, and you know where you could potentially exploit little bits of opportunity. Now I'll look at this for my own benefit, and I'll highlight some of the little stuff for the players as well, just to create a little bit of an awareness. But other than that, we can't control that fella or lady or whoever's reffing the game. They just gonna do whatever they see in that picture. So the more we can create, I always talk about positive pictures. So the more we can create positive pictures for the referee, the more we're gonna be perhaps in their good books. And then linking it back to your culture, the more we represent these good role models, once we're in between the four lines, we might gain a little bit of advantage on the other team if they don't treat that person with the greatest level of respect. So these are all opportunities, but it is what it is at the end of the day. And the more, if I talk about the referee in front of my team, then that just goes deeper down into the type of culture you wanna create, and then we're not taking responsibility for our own actions. But yeah, I can't answer it any better than the big dog, I suppose.
Doc, unmute. Doc, you still unmute, Doc.
So I actually was speaking about Paul's hair. He lost a bit of hair along the way. So where I'm heading again, and just to link it back to how do you deal? Let's say a referee, and sometimes some of the referees do admit when they made a mistake, and you just lost the final, and you due to a referee mistake. How do you regroup after that? What do you do as a coach to regroup? How do you deal with your players' disappointment? So the referee admits afterwards that he made a mistake, it costs you the final. How do you deal with that disappointment? Your own disappointment, your support staff, and that of the players.
Doc, sorry guys, can I come in there? Just to the reason why I asked that question is to go back to the 2011 World Cup, Bryce Lawrence. That was because that coach's career. I mean, that's my opinion. That's how I feel about Bryce Lawrence, about that particular incidents in the game. So yeah, that's why I asked the question. Doc, your mic.
So mine is just a follow-up to Philip's question. So that scenario is fine. We need to take the referee out of the equation. But now you in a final, you just lost to him. So the referee, you shake his hand and he admits that cost you the tournament or the trophy. What do you do, and how do you deal with your players' disappointment, your own disappointment, and that of your support staff? Don't know who wants to go. Warren, maybe we start with you.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Look, we're all human, and I've been in situations where they've admitted they've made wrong decisions, but again, it is moments, and I think Kobus he sort of alluded to it. It's how do we separate these moments from life? And we all know this game is just a small part of who we are. But I think if you build a strong enough culture where we go through stages where we have to feel those feelings, because otherwise we're not human. So we have to go through those feelings, especially in close final games where it's just a bounce at the ball that goes wrong. And then, yeah, it is, if you are the type of coaches always shouting and screaming and going ballistic on the sidelines, and if this is a normal trend, I think the players will know that. But maybe if all of us lose our emotions in some scenarios, but I think the really strong coaches and the ones who's high on that emotional intelligence spectrum, and who can stay blue for long periods of time, they would be pretty sharp in terms of handling that. What I normally do, I take it on the chin. I walk away. I go find myself a nice quiet space, and then if there's no Afrikaans people around me, I'll probably say the P word a few times. But I'm there in my own space, and we recognize and we let the players. We've got this thing where we have like a quiet time where we just, you've got to let them go and have their quiet time. I always go and find my space where I can, for a couple of reasons. If I need to vent at myself, or if I need to just if I can feel I'm going. So if I talk about blue and red, if I feel I'm going into the red and I feel there's behaviors that's triggering the red stuff, I might just make a quick phone call home in my time, just to speak with my missus and speak with my daughter. That instantly takes me away from that particular moment. It also, sometimes I have to walk away and go find the right headspace to make sure that I'm in the right possible frame of mind to say the right things post game. Or I would always walk very slow to a huddle at halftime, because that slow time is my opportunity to get myself in the best possible of mind to say the stuff that's going to be accurate and the stuff that possibly might win the game. So yeah, I've got my own sort of strategies that I try and follow. I try and not show too much. Now, I've not been in a World Cup finals just yet. That might change if the final whistle goes wrong. But I'd like to think I've done enough training and development for myself to make sure that I can stay blue for as long as I possibly can, and then just go find my own little space to do what I need to do to get myself in the right possible place. I don't know, Paul, have you got any other strategies you use?
Yeah, I would say that sometimes you're going to win games that you never should have won. Sometimes you're going to lose games that you never should have lost. And I think that is probably what my approach will be to the players. If you go into the game and your post-game, chat and review to the players, for me, it is always the same. If we went into the game with certain goals, process goals, sticking to our systems, our discipline, whatever it is. Now, if we come together after the game and we can say that we've ticked all those boxes, yes or no, did we win the game? Yes or no? I can only assess the team on the things that we've planned, on the things that we've trained, on the things that we committed ourselves to, and that is what I will hold the players accountable to. If we come off the field and we didn't tick those boxes and we've won the game, then I will say to the players, we didn't deserve that game, but we were lucky today. But it's not going to happen next time. If we come off the field and we've ticked all those boxes and we've lost the game, then I am going to say to the players, we were unlucky tonight. We've done all the things that we were supposed to do. That was not our night, and hopefully we'll get a better result next time. So when a ref has an influence on the outcome of a game, it is very difficult. But it also comes down to what is my philosophy as a coach. Because if I go on the pendulum between challenge and support, that is not the time to challenge the players. That is the time to support the players and to tell them that this was meant to be our game, but unfortunately it wasn't our day. We've done everything in our power in terms of all the boxes that we had to tick, and hopefully if we're going to continue that, we will get more results in our favor. This was one moment. This is probably going to not happen every single time if we tick those boxes, but 99% of the time, if we're going to continue doing the things that we commit ourselves to, we keep improving on that, as a team every single time, hopefully we're going to get more results in our favor. And that's all that's all that I can do as a coach, is to comfort the team. And what we had in the sevens, I know that normally in 15s, it's a 24-hour rule. In sevens, Warren, as you know, it's probably 12 hours because the next day you're playing a game again, and playing 3 games again if you're lucky, is to let the players feel whatever they want to feel. Because every player and every coach and every support staff is going to experience it differently. And you need to allow them that space to feel whatever they need to feel. But the next day when you get together as a team, and on the Monday when you get together, in 15s, then you have to start again. So I think it's important. Is my approach to failure, let's say failure, because we're talking about, or let's say not achieving our goal, and whether we've won or whether we've lost the game is going to be exactly the same, because my checklist that I'm going to review will be exactly the same. It is just my approach that is going to be different.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other questions? Okay, I think we've got about 5 minutes left, and I see that they've extended our time on this meeting to 40 minutes, so we've got about 5 minutes to 6 minutes left. So,
but just quickly on Charles and the comments that he made on, so how do you coach players to become more creative? And I mean, this is also Warren's expertise, and coaching players, to see different space and different opportunities. And I think, the example that I made, about, painting the chair or drawing the chair and things like that. So if I have to mention 2 things, so one is staying above the line, and the other one is what we called, seeing the white space. Now, when we play the game, is we tend to look at players that's in front of you. What we would encourage the players is to see the space in between players. So you're not attacking players, you're attacking the space. And that's the white space that I was talking about when I talked about the chair. Do you draw the chair, or do you draw the space, around the outline around the chair? And if you can get players, to see that kind of white space, they will see different kind of opportunities as opposed to seeing players in front of you. The way that you're going to engage with your players, at training, post-training, based on, video or just, having a general chat with players, that is going to hopefully encourage the players to see other opportunities or other possibilities, when they play and when they train.
Thanks for that, Coach. I know, Warren, you presenting a webinar for Coach Logic as well tomorrow. Maybe you want to share, and maybe just a time slot on how people can log in.
Yeah, I'm just going to steal everything we've spoken about tonight and copy and paste it. That's the first thing I want to do. I'm definitely procrastinate. I leave everything to the last minute.
Okay.
No, yeah, it will be 3 o'clock UK time. So I think that is 4 p.m.
Yeah, we'll be back to 1 hour difference.
Yeah, I can maybe just share the link on our group. And then I think you just sign into Zoom, and hopefully, I think it's free as well.
Yeah, it's free.
So yeah, we'll do. I'll deliver on practice design. Now, I always make it clear. This is the way I see the world, and this is the way I think I can develop creative thinking players. And then so I'll just share a few of my thoughts. Tomorrow over there. Obviously, everyone's welcome to jump on board. But no, I think Paul has made a great point there. Maybe we can chew a little bit of fat on there in the next slot, and maybe Paul can share a few cool examples of how he gets the players to see more of the white space around the chair, and maybe dig into a little bit of constraint led and affordances. Maybe we can share a little bit around there. I tend to not go too much into these academic words because I'm a simple guy. I like to keep it practical and look at stuff that works best for me. But yeah, I think maybe if we facilitate it around that in the next 30 minutes, maybe we can share some stuff, and maybe I can just use all this information tomorrow.
Is that the idea? So that we can finish it over. Well done. Thanks. So one thing maybe, so in the next, so the meeting's gonna end now in, let's say less than 2 minutes. Maybe I should end it now and we go into the next 30 minutes. Just share the link with everyone, and then it's available to everyone. And then,
okay, cool.
Yeah, so next 30 minutes, we don't have to use the 30 minutes. So, but until just before 8, we can, and then we can conclude. And hopefully, if we can decide on a topic for next week as well. Coach Paul, he promised me a session. He didn't say when, so hopefully it's next week that he can present. So I'm going to end this meeting now, guys, and please connect with the next one. And then we're going to just to create how to create that creative players and the creative thinking players. So I'm going to end this one, and then you just join up with the next one.
Dalk my hoor?
Yeah, John.
Ja, ek weet nie wat vanaand met die prent aangaan nie, maar anyway, maak my nie saak nie. Ek het vir Paul en vir Warren 'n vraag. So,
okay, nee, is reg, jy kan sommer wegsprong. As almal op is weer. What's the 2 Phillips? Philip Humphreys. Okay, so Warren just indicated he's got 15 minutes. I think that's enough to wrap up tonight and hopefully set. So John, Warren, there was a coach from John, not a coach from John, a question from John that he just needed you to answer. John, all yours?
Evening, Warren. I have a question for you and Paul, and this thing that has been bugging me a long time. Do you have any players that ever thrived after a half-time talk you gave him, and the thing is, you were shouting at him like a drill sergeant? Have you ever had a player like that thrives under that type of environment?
Paul, shall I go first, Paul, or?
Sorry, Warren. I've just joined now.
Okay.
I've missed the question. Yeah.
Evening,
So
Paul. The question is halftime talks. Have you ever had a player that thrived when you are shouting on him like a drill sergeant? Because some players thrive on it and others doesn't. You know, if you start shouting, they draw back. So my question is, have you ever had a player that thrived under that type of pressure when somebody's shouting like a drill sergeant?
yeah, I think to answer your question, I think the key thing is, yeah, I always talk about know your coffee. So if you coffee drinkers here, I always use this analogy, and I use a picture of a coffee. If we ever, you know, when you drink a cappuccino, have you ever wondered where that bean come from? So it's a good thing as a coach to just think about. So if you think about that journey of that coffee bean, where did it originate? Who harvested? What is the journey? How did it become this beautiful cup of cappuccino in front of you? Now, same thing with the players. And again, the more we know our players, the more we understand their journeys and know their stories and know what intrinsically motivate them. The better will be at reading the thermostat. So obviously you can't shout and scream at every player. Some of the players, some players, that's what they want. They want you to tell them what to do and being a little bit of a drill sergeant. Others just want the right hand around the shoulders. You just got to have that balance right all the time. I've had a particular guy that I know. So we were out in the Europeans. My perception was he wasn't going great. So, but he doesn't deal well with being shouted at. So he goes deep in his shell when he gets shouted at. So all I did, I subbed him. And as he walked over, I said, "Do you understand why I just subbed you?" And he sort of acknowledged it. But that gave him a lot of time to get himself back in the right space. And when I put him back on, because I had to put him back on. So as soon as I put him back on, that last few minutes, he was one of our best players. But yes, I'm not a big shouter. I prefer not to shout much, but sometimes you have to give him a quick little bollocking. And I think for me, it's always once you've got a really good, strong relationship with your players, they know when you're disappointed. So if you can express that disappointment based on them perhaps operating below their capabilities, then you can. Man, all depends the context of when and why you shout at them, in my opinion. But I don't think there's anything wrong. It's just you got to know your coffee. You got to know your coffee. If you know your coffee well enough, and then you know how you're going to get the best out of them. But if you're just shouting at the people because your perception, and again, it is what Paul said. Paul spoke about the chair and the space. Sometimes we as coaches to see the chair, and we gotta see the game through the eyes of the player and understand what causes those type of behaviors to make sure that they at the best place. Also, right, I give you another example. I shouted at one of our best aerial specialists when I coached England, Harry Glover. It's probably one of the best from the kickoff. I shouted at him and I said, it was sort of towards the last play, and I said, "You got to get this ball back." And he sort of looked at me as to say, "Mate, I'm the best at this. My job is to get the ball back at every restart." And just reflecting on that, it was right. You got to really know what you're shouting, screaming at. If you're gonna shout unnecessary stuff at players. Sorry, that is the little terrorist in the background. I hope that answers your question, Philip. But I struggle to shout at people.
John?
Yeah. One of the reasons why I'm asking you is me being in the Boland setup, and a lot of guys come from the Boland setup. you go half times into, you know, your halftime talks. I just let the coaches talk. I'm more watching the opponents' coaches, and they're going off like these drill sergeants from the 1918s, you know, and they're shouting at the players, and I'm thinking about to myself, so how much information are you actually going through to the players? You know, what's he catching on to? Is the message actually going through? Or are the guys just watching here the coach going off like a donderbase in Afrikaans, you know? So that's why I'm asking you, have you ever had a player that actually thrive under that situation? Because if I was the player, I would just look at the coach, you know, yes, this guy's going off like a cracker and mumbling a lot of stuff, and I'm not getting the message.
I've
So
personally,
again,
yeah, no, I've personally not experienced that based on the environments I've been involved in. I'm currently in a female environment. If you shout, mate, I can promise you, you're not going to get anything out of them because they just go deep in their shells. Yeah, so no, maybe Paul, maybe you've experienced it slightly differently, but I've not experienced where I had to shout at someone to get the best out of them. Yes, I've expressed disappointment a number of times, and that hits them pretty hard, but not where I had to shout ridiculously. I measure that first bit of that first half, or I measure the half as well, just to see how accurate I was with my halftime conversations, and I can do that individually. I measure my interaction based on, did my interaction take them to the place where they needed to be, based on what I'm saying, based on the words and the actions. So that's sort of the little bits of trends that I look at. My bias is definitely not around the shouting stuff, but yeah, I can definitely express my disappointment. I'm not sure, Paul, over to you, Mark.
I think maybe to talk out of my own experience, I think you probably won't really have a good understanding of coaching if you in a situation where I am in at the moment, you know, where I'm consulting with Japan Sevens with their women's team, and you don't speak their language, you don't understand their language. So how are you going to communicate? Shouting and screaming is not going to do it for you. As I was in Kenya, they speak a different language. Now I'm in Japan, they speak a different language. How are you going to get your message across? And how are you going to get that team, although you're only consulting, so I'm only working with the coaches. So even that is a different kind of coaching. So you have to work with the coaches who's going to work with the players. So now how is that message not going to get lost, you know, within that process? So I think, you know, a lot of times when you're coaching in an area like the Boland, coaching in SWD, and you're coaching smaller teams, sometimes you can get away with things. You're speaking the same language, they're coming from a certain area, they only respond maybe to a certain, you know, stimulus or a certain response. And then also the coaches maybe sometimes when they do these kind of things, they're not always knowledgeable about other ways and other coaching styles. You know, so you have to maybe look at it from that perspective as well. But I think, you know, you'll have to find, I can't see how constructive you can be or going to be, you know, if you keep, you know, shouting and screaming at players. I think, Warren, you summed it up beautifully. I mean, you have to constantly assess, you know, what your change room, you know, the thermostat that you're talking about, and just keep assessing that. Because if you're coming into the change room and you're up by 15 points, it's going to be different when you're coming into the change room and you're down by 50 points. Now, if there need to be a response, you know, and that response isn't coming the way that you want it, you know, because they need to do something in the second half, then obviously that is going to require something different. But that is going to require you to have like a sensitivity to the context.
Coach Paul, I've just got we've got a last question for Coach Warren, and this came from Hanu. So Hanu, you spoke about knowing your coffee, but limited time in a session, how do you get to know your players as you go, or do you have sit-down sessions?
For me, great question, Hanu. I definitely think you've got a phone, haven't you? Yeah, you better start using that phone, mate, and create some coffee conversations over the phone with your limited time. I think it's a brilliant opportunity for us to be more creative with the way we coach, especially in this time now where we've got so much time on our hands. Start making phone calls, start connecting with people. I know a lot of you guys coach on a Tuesday and a Thursday, and then you've got games on Saturdays. I mean, WhatsApp is a great tool. There's so many cool ways that you connect with your people. Try and not just talk about rugby, because again, this is a small part of who we are as people. I think sometimes as coaches, and I've been in these situations where we always say, yeah, we don't have a lot of time to connect with our players, but actually we've got a lot of time. We've got a lot of time Monday to Sunday to connect with them. We just gotta, whether it's over the phone, whether it's a FaceTime, whether it's just a message, whether it's just checking in on their family. I like to challenge coaches, and I challenge myself to find out a lot of stuff about the players, because we know they're rugby players, because that's why they're there. Why do they play? Ever wondered, asking them that question, why do they play? There's so many different factors to figure out sort of around the game. So although we have limited coaching time, on the grass coaching time, we've actually got a lot of time to maximize and find out what motivates them away from the game. Because we got always think about it. And I always use, as a young coach in the academy, my big focus was always about what is that player doing when he leaves his house to get to training in the Premiership Academy environment and with England. What's happening there? I needed to be more in control, not necessarily controlling that, but I needed to have a better understanding of that part, because that part is going to make the big difference on the grass. So yes, we've got limited time coaching, but we've got more time getting to know our coffee and figuring out what is their journeys, where do they come from, how do they get to training. One of the best players now at the minute in the Premiership, Gabriel Ibitoye, plays for Harlequins on the wing. He was going to stop playing at 18 because there was a big thing at the time. Everyone was saying, oh yeah, no, he's not. Gabs is not committed to playing for the club because he doesn't turn up to training. But it's not until I created them again, back to the picture, the chair and the white space. I had to create the white space for the rest of the coaches at of Harlequins to understand that this kid, single parent, he's the main guy in the household. He has to pick up his brother. He's from an African, culturally from Nigeria, so he's got African background. So mom is not interested in rugby. What is rugby? You got to go and get your education. That is the key stuff. He had to take 2 buses, a train, another bus to get to the training. Yeah, so then he had to do the same journey back. Sometimes there isn't money. There's pressure from us as coaches as, oh, why is this guy not sending this in? Why is he not doing his well-being? Why is he not doing that? But it's until they understood the white paint or the white space around this chair where they sort of went, okay, now we get it. So don't say this guy is not committed, because he's pretty committed to go and pick up his brother after school every single day and then take him home, and then he has to do all those journeys to get to the training. That's pretty good commitment for me. So yeah, but I wouldn't have known it if I didn't go deeper into his story. The rest of the coaches wouldn't have known it. All they would have known is, he doesn't care about rugby. So yeah, get to know your coffee, mate.
Cool. Thanks, Warren. I appreciate it.
Okay,
Dead on.
thanks.
Talk.
Right,
Warren,
I'm
just
gonna have to go,
Warren,
fellas. I'm looking forward
Warren,
to
I
the
just
next
want to make
one.
one last comment before you go. I'm just glad you didn't lose the sense of Kraaifontein by using the P word often.
No. I am, especially now in isolation. I think my missus has left me about 10 times already. So I've got to go and just shout it out loudly upstairs.
Okay, guys, Warren just needs to go. Warren, thanks again for your time and all the knowledge shared tonight. We really
Okay.
appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, guys. And then hopefully next time me and Paul don't have to speak. We can just listen.
Exactly.
I think there's some
Thank
cool
you.
information here.
Doc.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Well, look,
Cheers, guys.
yes,
Bye-bye.
thanks, Warren. Keep Wale.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye.
All right. Doc, can I go?
Yes, you can go.
Okay. Yeah, just to add on to what Warren said, yeah, it's so deja vu for me. Last night I just told my wife I'm just gonna check on some players, give them video calls on WhatsApp, and I found that one guy, just to add on to Hanno, and I could see his expression on his face, and I asked him, "But what's wrong?" And he said, "Simple thing, you don't have money." And I looked at my wife, and the wife said, "But what are you gonna do now? Because we're in lockdown and we can't go out and all that stuff." But with technology, I managed to transfer 50 rand for him for airtime or for whatever he needs it. And I mean, the point I want to make is, I know in the future that guy will break his legs for me or for the other coaches on the field, because what I did for him last night, I want nothing in return for that, but I know deep inside he will give 150%. And it's the small things, like Warren has said, that you must go and dig deeper, go find out where does that player come from, what is his background. And I mean, I'm very young in this game, in this coaching game. It's my first year, but I've learned a lot from guys like you on this group, and from Wilbur and from Peter de Villiers, whoever I come across. But I mean, I know there's a lot of ways to know your players.
Yeah, no.
Cool shot, Warren.
Thanks for that, Philip. I think it's about, and I'm going to use this example from now on, know your coffee. And it's closely related to my philosophy, I think, is once you get to know your players, I always talk about, I need to know what makes you tick. And I think that Warren just confirmed that. So, and it's also, I want to just talk on John's question. Sometimes not shouting at an individual, but shouting at a behavior is needed. But you don't target the individual, but address the behavior. But don't use, so let's say once you get a response from them and you get that improvement, don't use that as a trend, because it might not work the next time. It's all about knowing your players. And I think it's about building relationships. And building that relationships, the only way you build that is to get to know them and to find out. Warren stated something beautiful for me, and it stood out: know your why they're playing. Because in a club setup, you might have players that plays for social reasons. They just want to interact with players. Some want to pursue a professional career, and you need to cater for all of them. So I think that is the challenge for us as coaches. So I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. And thanks, guys. Thanks for coming out. And I think it went better than expected. We had last week, we had 5 people. This week we had 16. So that's a massive improvement from last week. And I think we'll have another one next week, and I'll chat to some of the guys in the group just to get a topic going. Maybe next week we should try Teams as well, because Teams, you can have a 90-minute to a 2-hour meeting on it, and the quality is also not bad. Maybe we can test it in the week just to try that out, because then there's no like a pause and then you need to move to the next one. So I'll investigate that. And I think Kobus made Coach Paul, thanks for introducing Kobus to me, and just in short space to get him on board as well was great. And by the way, you've got a great golfer on, Coach Paul. So for me, there's 5 things that I want to take from this, and I want to share with you is like a take-home message. And when you're in a slump or when you're in that dark moment, is physically look after yourself, because what we tend to do is we go into a slump, you sit at home, you work, you eat, you drink coffee, all that unhealthy stuff. So maybe sometimes a run. I know it's difficult in this next time, but gym, and that's good just to get out of that environment and to clear your head. And some things that I like to do is take a drive to the beach, and that clears your head. I think it's also to believe in yourself, believe in your systems that you created, because you created it for a specific reason. I think sometimes that's the first thing that we doubt. Doubt is your own ability. Then get a mentor coach. And it's something that I speak to guys quite a lot. I've got a lot of mentors. Some of them are outside sport, and sometimes they're just a soundboard to bounce ideas and to get motivation. And sometimes you just want that person to listen. He doesn't need to say anything, but at least he listens to you, and that's what we need. Then, and we spoke about this last week, is never stop learning. Educate yourself, read up. But there's also a balance that you need to find, because when you push it too far, and you work too hard, and that sometimes leads to burnout. So that you also need to find the balance, learn the right way and more effective. For me personally, I think. And then the last thing, and it's something that and Hanu knows me well. He's worked with me a couple of years. I think don't lose your sense of humor. I think that's for me is important when you're in that slump. I tease quite a lot, Philip. I got hold of him last week on a group, and that for me is how I deal with slumps. And you need to know yourself and find that sense of humor, because I think sometimes that's the only thing that keeps you going. And for me, that's the 5 things that I want you guys to take out from tonight. And there's a lot of information, and I'm going to make recordings available. I'll be with you now, Philip. So I'm going to make the recording available because there's quite a lot of information that went out tonight. And again, Coach Paul, I want to thank you, and thanks for supporting it. It's not always that you get a professional coach or coach of your caliber that comes on and wants to share. And I think we can learn a hell of a lot from your approach and also your mindset, where you want to share and you want coaches to develop. So thanks for that. Yes, Philip.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, Doc, we as coaches must just remember, at the end of the game or a tournament, or whether you've been in abroad or wherever, you must come back home to your family. So just remember that, and don't come home in a state of mind of negativity, because you must deal with your family as well. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Philip. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming out. Coach Paul, thanks a lot, eh? You're a legend. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Doc.
Okay, cheers.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.